Shalom. Call halal Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai Bahasham Rakaha Kwadash. Double honors unto the apostles, double honors unto the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so, now more so than ever. The would-be judges, the 144,000, the tabernacle of David, which is being established here on earth before the sight of all the heathen to their dismay, which are 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, led by King David, under the authority of who the world calls JC, right? Who they fraudulently and falsely call JC. His name is Yahushai. That is what's written in the Bible. That is the kingdom of heaven. It's not floating around in the clouds after you die. All right, these people will receive immortality and be the rulers of all mankind on earth, enforcing the laws of heaven on earth as it is in heaven, just like the Lord's Prayer says. Christianism has completely and totally lied and tried to deny the bloodline immortality of the Hebrew Israelites. As Paul says in Corinthians, I think it's 1 Corinthians 11. Let's see if I can grab it real quick. Okay. This is a long introduction, but this is just the way I do it now. The Spirit moved me. Lessons within lessons. 1 Corinthians, is it 11 and 22? I can never remember. Or was it 2 Corinthians? How about I do it this way? Yes, 2 Corinthians 11:22. I was in first. And it reads, are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. Okay? But to be the seed, to be a Hebrew and to be an Israelite, you have to be a seed of Abraham according to Isaac and then through Jacob. Something that Christianism leaves out. All right? And they're trying to take away the seed line. So that's what this message is to those who are scattered, all right? And to the rest of the scattered, all right, that are scattered among the heathen nations, that have the appearance of the heathen nations, this whole lesson is going to be centered around them. Those who are scattered among the heathen, that have the appearance of the heathen. And to those who know who they are, all right? Because these scriptures and this scenario came to life yesterday when I went way up north to the northern camp, to the Evanston camp here in Chicago. All right. And to the few Akwaf that are listening and learning, to you, I say shalom. So to give you a breakdown before I read all these scriptures, I got a lot of scriptures to read. I got to camp about maybe 40 minutes before the camp starts. All right. And I'm sitting in this very busy bus terminal, train terminal. All right. Just checking out the sights. People watching, and I stood up to so I could, go into my bag. And a brother in a garment, a t-shirt, the brothers who put the fringes on their t-shirts, he walked up, and out of all the people standing there, he walked up to me, not knowing who I was. And when he walked up, I thought he was a brother coming to watch, the elder bros, the Evanston camp teach. He's in the spot where they teach at. So when I looked up and he's walking right to me, I was like, hey, shalom, bro. And he was like, oh, so you're a Hebrew. And then he said, well, brother, why aren't you wearing your fringes? I was like, oh boy. So we started going back and forth about that. And I'm not even gonna get into the discourse that we had, but I told him, you're worried about you, and then so you've been basically watching these camps, the law, which keep not the law. So we got into so basically I said, you worried about me wearing my fringes. I said, well, my fringes are right here in my bag, and I'm about to put my garment on in a moment here, and teach right here in this very spot, which I thought you were here for, and and he was like, well, why are you not wearing it? And so, I told him, I said, you know what? I said, look, brother, all things are expedient, but but everything's not lawful. And he ran to the, well, we're supposed to wear it throughout our generations. And I said, yeah, and that was also when we weren't in captivity. We weren't behind enemy lines. I said, I work around the enemy all day, every day, who know exactly who we are. And I wouldn't have any income or a job if I did that. All right. I said, so you're not looking at the reality of the situation, and I said, that's just not, especially what's going on today. You're going to make yourself a target. All right. Well, we don't have the spirit of fear. I said, it's not the fear. I said, it's wisdom. I said, what did David do when he got identified? Okay. He played like he was crazy and got himself out that jam. All right. So you have to realize where you are. And then I said, you're not even keeping the Shabbat. And he's like, well, the Shabbat's every Friday to Saturday night. Now, mind you, it's the day hasn't changed. It isn't the evening yet. So I said, no, you're wrong. I said, now, this time, the new Shabbat actually happens to fall on Friday night to Saturday night. So we know we had this back and forth discourse. And then I gave him a couple scriptures on the new moon and how the moon is how that you tell time and not the sun. What the sun does is it rises in the east, it rotates to the south until it swings around to the west and sets in the west. The sun never goes north. So the sun is never sitting in the northern sky. So you know which way north is, depending on the time of day that you're in. All right. You know that if it's early morning, that the north is to your left if you're looking east at the sun. If it's in the middle of the afternoon, in the afternoon hours, around 12 or 1 o'clock, it's going to be sitting in the west, in the south. So you know the north is behind you. All right. And if the sun is about to set and you're facing it, you know that the south is to your left, and you know that the north is to your right. So the sun can be used to give you direction, but to tell time, you need the moon, because the moon changes in its brightness. All right. It starts off in it's dark. We can barely see it. Then it forms that little C. All right. And then it's what's, the same like the crescent moon. All right. And then it goes all the way to a full moon. You know that when it's full moon, that you're around in the middle of the month. You're in the middle of that. And even the scripture tells you that the cycle of the moon is basically how your month's time. The word month comes from the moon. And then it begins to decrease. All right. It gets darker because it starts to form a C in the other direction until it's into a crescent moon again, and then till it's dark, so where you can barely see it. That is your new moon. All right. You got people that teach that the full moon is a new moon. That's confusion. When I first woke up to this truth, that's what I thought until I got corrected. All right. So he, after receiving that, he kind of got cut because he said, yeah, I did read that. And I said, well, so that means that, were you with your girl yesterday? Or this day? I said, look, so what that means is that whoever taught you that, they're going off, and they've been teaching men like you to go off. And there's going to be a heavy toll for that. All right. And you still got people teaching that, even though you got all these scriptures that tell you otherwise. So he left to go to Popeyes, to go eat that abominable Popeyes. And the reason I call it abominable, because Popeyes, you can look it up. They cook their food with beef oil and vegetable oil. The vegetables does not produce oil. So vegetable oil is not an oil, it's an abomination. And then they use that same grease, and then they cook the chicken in the same grease that they cook the popcorn shrimp and all the other stuff, and the pork and all the others. They cook it all in the same grease, in the same oil. Then I had a brother tell me how they put some weird white powder in it, and they use the same grease for 3 weeks before they change it. So anyway, you're far from keeping the law, and we can't keep the law perfectly. That's why we rehearse the righteous acts, and we keep the law to the best of our ability on this side. That's what we do. to the best of our ability. And that's what we're supposed to do. The law doesn't save you, but this law is a school teacher, and it is a guide on how to please the Lord. So so ultimately it's faith in Yahushua that saves you. But you can't go around just stealing. You can't go around just committing adultery. You can't go around committing murder. That's all in the law. Okay? Because I told him, I told him too. And where we were standing was full of moles. It was dudes walking by with titties, man. There was two young girls over there that were all grinding and kissing up on each other. I said, according to the law, we're supposed to be, unaliving them. I said, but we can't do that, can we? Exactly. So I said, so you stressing people about wearing their fringes in their everyday life when you should really be trying to keep a low profile, right? Going to work, with all this negative attention. They're trying to label us terrorists and everything else. They're getting ready to take away the videos. Eventually, the famine of the word is coming. So anyway, the young brother left, and now we get into the meat of what happened. And then I can go into all these scriptures. So he did come back about a half hour later than what he said. He came back. But when he came back we started edifying him and started going over to some of the same things that we did, giving him a thorough education. And, he tried to buck up and come with the argument, but then we quickly destroyed it with scripture. All right. And two Ethiopians walked up. All right. And we were heavy in the book of Acts because he kept trying to use Acts 10 to prove that the gospel had to go to all people. All right. And that he was trying to make it that, no, not him. This was the Ethiopian, Salakia. So the Ethiopian guy started asking all these questions. And within 2 minutes of talking, I told him that you just brought to life exactly what we're talking about. All right, because you are a scattered Israelite among the heathen that have the appearance of the heathen. But your friend, that guy is a Hamite. He's an Ethiopian. He's of Cush. All right. He has no salvation with the Lord. All right. I said he's not an Edomite, so his nation will eventually get mercy. But you and he are going to separate eventually. Because this guy was actively seeking and searching for the truth. All right. And his spirit bear witness with our spirit. That dude was not, So anyway, we're going to get into the scriptures now. So the whole lesson became exactly, of the book of Acts. And his questions the spirit took over the young Benjamite that was there. And the Benjamite, I can tell, was very uncomfortable. He realized how much he didn't know. All right. Because in his mind, this dude was a heathen and he has no chance of salvation. But let's read the scriptures and see what the scriptures have to say. So this is Acts. All right. And see and see the reason why Paul, and this is what the Ethiopian guy was so stuck on. He had a misunderstanding of Paul's writings. And even though we read, Romans 9, 1-5 and a couple other scriptures, to make you, Paul breaks down who the gospel is to in Romans the 9th chapter. So if there's any confusion about any of the scriptures in Rome, when he's saying all people and all who believe, he was talking to the Israelites and he was talking to the Hellenists, all right, who were Greek-speaking Jews. And that's something that this young guy couldn't get because he kept there. Well, they're scattered, all nations, all people. Well, the scriptures tell you in so many places that the Israelites got scattered to all nations. So the gospel had to go to those nations to reach those that of the scattered, of the diaspora, who has to hear the nation, who has to hear the gospel. Okay. And that's the reason why it's so much misunderstanding within Christianism, because Christianism left out the 400-year period of the Greek captivity. All right. Of the time that the Israelites were among the Greeks and became Gentiles. That's the time period. It didn't happen during the Romans. It already was a 400-year history of them not practicing their laws, not being Israelites and being heathen. And so they were looked at by heathen from those who were under the circumcision. Those of them who knew that they were Benjamin, Levi, or Judah looked at the Israelites who they knew were their people, but were keeping the Grecian customs, dressing like the Greeks, talking like the Greeks, doing Grecian things. They labeled them Gentiles and heathen as well. That's what Peter's vision was all about. All right. So we're going to read the Acts 10 because he kept trying to go to Acts 10. So let's go to Daniel first before we go to any of this. Let's go to the book of Daniel. Daniel 12. And I'm going to read verse 9. All right. And it says, because this Ethiopian guy was a Muslim, and then he became Jewish, and then he became a Christian because he saw that those ways weren't lining up. All right. He said, I'm trying. So he became an Orthodox Christian because he figured the church, he was trying to make it physical of all the people, was established, and the gospel couldn't be tampered with and had to be solid. I said, well, that's not true. Those are the doctrines of men. Daniel told you this, and this is Daniel 12 and 9. It says, and he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Because, of course, we gave him a breakdown of the 12 tribe sign, how he made that scripture come to life when he walked up and asked, what is this? All right. And we gave him a breakdown. That's when the truth came into the world. The truth came into the world, and the 12 tribe sign came along with it. Okay. Because they had to set up the stick of Ephraim and Judah. The Ish people never did that. All right. Because they're not the people. They did fulfill the prophecy in Ezekiel 36, though. All right. Christians will speak. They'll mention Ezekiel 37, but never go into it. All right. There's a 12 tribe sign that had to be in the last days. It had to be set up on the highways and byways on the streets of the world, in the nations, to declare that for the people who are scattered among them to see it and to ask about it. Who fulfilled that? You can go back to 2 Corinthians 11. All right. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. So the Hebrew Israelites were to do that, and we have done that. That prophecy came up to pass right in his face. All right. So it was sealed into the end, Daniel 12 and 9, to the time of the end, and the awakening is a part of the end being here. Let's go to Daniel 12 and 13. But go thy way to the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. The prophets would stand in their lot and start prophesying again and present that 12 tribe sign to their scattered people. They would awake. Anyone claiming to have known who they are the entire time is a liar. All right. And that will be the Ish people, the converts. Okay. There had to be a great awakening. The Israelites got cut off from their heritage. They were dormant. All right. Because he's trying to say that whether, the gospel could never die. I said it didn't die. It came back when they woke up. It came back with them. All right. Now that we're talking about the diaspora and the dispersed, you have to get Acts 6 and 1 or Acts 9 and 29. Let's go to that real quick. Well, this is 9 and 29. And it reads, in fact, let me get it in the blue letter. I do have the blue letter Bible. Let's do that. And this is Acts 9 and 29. And it reads, and he spake boldly in the name of the Lord, Yahushua, and disputed. Hold on. Trying to get that to turn off. There we go. And disputed against the Grecians. But they went about to slay him. All right. So, and that same word Grecian is in Acts 6 and 1. The same word. And the word there is G in the Greek, because every word in the Bible is numbered. Is either because the Bible was written in the Hebrew and in the Greek. All right. And so New Testament now was in the Greek. All right. So the word there for Grecian is G, meaning Greek, 1675. When you look that up, that word is Hellenist. And it tells you that it is a Greek-speaking Jew. All right. And it's the same word in Acts 6:1. So the reason why it says there's no difference between neither Greek nor Jew is because they were of the same olive tree. That's the reason why you had olives on the screen. You had the wild olives that were being brought back in, all right, because they'll say olive complexions. Well, we know that the Israelites weren't green. They were dark, all right? But these green olives are still Israelites. You get it? They were grafted back in. You can't be brought back into something you were never a part of. Okay? When they'll say olive complexion, well, you're looking at olives and you know that people aren't green. That was another lie that they try to get around the truth. Okay? Olives are dark colored. So were the Israelites. And so were all the people in Mesopotamia, Western Asia, that they fraudulently call the Middle East today, to try to make it, try to make that the Middle East is the direction, and they try to make it a race or something, the Mesopotamia, so-called Middle East, sits in Western Asia. So does Europe. That's why they say Eurasia. There's no separation. You can walk from Israel to Turkey right into so-called Eurasia, and then just keep walking right back over into the rest of Asia, toward Russia, into the stand countries. All right? It's all one continent. There's only 6 continents, not 7. That was a lie, another lie created by the creators of Christianism. And Christianism came in that time when the books were sealed. So Christianism, that's the reason why they don't have understanding and why they lie, because Christianity was created during the time when the books were sealed. That's why, and so they try to make universal something that is not universal. Okay? So when you get to Acts 2, let's go to Acts 2 now since we're there. And 5. Well, let's read it 1 first. Hold on, I'm going to go back to my King James. So this is Acts 2 and 1. It says, and in the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord and in one place. The they, you jump down to verse 5. This is the subject matter. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven, the scattered Israelites. All right, so the Judeans, which basically was the southern kingdom. Benjamin, Judah, and Levi. Okay? That is the subject matter of the Pentecost. The other nations weren't there. It was the Israelites. So when you read the rest of Acts, it's the same thing. All right? The ones who would call themselves Grecians. Okay? So it says, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now when the noise was abroad and the multitude came together and were confounded, because every man heard them speak in his own language. That was the Holy Spirit performing a miracle. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying to one another, behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? And they weren't. All right. You have many Galileans, all these Israelites, but yet they were hearing all these other people among the Galileans that were speaking, but yet they all heard the Hebrew. Okay. And how we hear every man in our own tongue wherein we were born. Parthians and Medes and Elamites and dwellers of Mesopotamia and in Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, and Egypt, and in the parts of Libya and Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Judeans and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians. We do hear them speak in our own tongues the wonderful works of God. So it wasn't talking about the people of those regions. It was talking about the Israelites, the Judeans, that was scattered among those people. It told you in verse 5 that they were all Judeans. That's the subject matter. All right. So it wasn't actual Arabians, actual people from Cyrene or Egypt. It was the Israelites that were among them that had come. This had nothing to do with other people. We'll keep reading to prove it even further. It says, and they were all amazed and were in doubt, saying to one another, what meaneth this? Others mocking said, these men are full of new wine. But Peter, standing up with the 11, he was with the 12, he was part of the 12, lifted up his voice and said unto them, ye men of Judea, and all ye that dwell in Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken my words. For these men are not drunken as ye suppose, seeing but the third hour of the day. But this is which was spoken by the prophet Joel. What was spoken by the prophet Joel? Let's go to it. This is Joel 2:27. And it reads, and ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am Yahweh your power, and none else. Then the matter was read after that. It said, and none else, and my people shall never be ashamed. Right? And it said, and then I'm going to read down to 29 anyway. It says, and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And that doesn't mean that they get the salvation. All right. That means that they get to hear this and know the truth, because the truth has been void, because the books were sealed during the time of the creation of Christianity. The books were sealed during the time of the creation of Christianity. That's going to be the title of this video. All right. It says, and your daughters shall prophesy, and your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids of those days will I pour out my spirit. That's why so many people, especially Edomites, are making videos saying they're seeing the end, and they seeing the images of the Lord, the angels, and that they're so-called black olives, these dark olives. That's what they're telling you. And many of them are agreeing that what these Hebrew Israelites are saying is true. That's what that means. Okay? Amos backs it up even more. Go to the book of Amos 3, verses 1 and 2. Hear the word that Yahweh has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up out of the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities. All right. So the part of the punishment was the scattering among the people and losing our heritage. This creation of Christianity, this creation of Judaism, the creation of Islam, all those things happened during the time that the books were sealed. Again, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the three main religions, were created during the time that the books were sealed. Point blank, period. All right. So, talking about that, let's go back to Acts now. Back to the book of Acts. 2, what did I leave off? About 13 here. Oh yeah, 16 with the prophet Joel. Verse 17, because I'm going to read all the way to 22. And it shall come to pass that in the last days, saith the Lord, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. The same thing I read in Joel. And your sons and daughters shall prophesy. And your young men shall see visions, and your old shall dream dreams. All right. And on my servants and my handmaids will I pour out those days my spirit, and they shall prophesy. That's why the servants and the handmaids, this heathen, all right, are also starting to agree and tell you that they're seeing the end and the destruction. Or they'll put up videos and say they've seen, the Lord was revealed to them in dreams and stuff, and they saw that he and the angels were dark and not white. Okay, and not pale, because there's no such thing as white people. They made that up. And I will show wonders in heaven and above, and signs in the earth, of blood and fire and vapors of smoke. And you've been seeing all manner of things in the heavens, and that all would be in the end days. All these solar eclipse and all these other things, the blood moons. All right, that's all. We're at the end. Now the truth is out. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and notable day of the Lord to come. It tells you these things will happen right before the Lord comes back. All right. And it shall come to pass that whoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. And they'll run to that in Galatians and in other parts of the Bible and Romans. But then here's the precept. All right. It's in verse 22. Ye men of Israel, hear these words. Yahushua of Nazareth, a man approved of God among you, among the Israelites, all right, by miracles and wonders and signs which God did by him in the midst of you, as ye yourselves are also known. All right, there it is, man. You try to make this, about other people, and it's not. All right, and there's so many scriptures that talked about the dispersed among the, that's why I say among the heathen that looked like the heathen. And let me get a couple of them, precept upon precept. Something else that the young Ethiopian Jake, the scattered Israelite, didn't understand. I said, well, what's a precept? And he didn't know. And I told him that your doctrine has to go precept upon precept. But with Christianism, especially apologists try to deny and call it Hebrew hopscotch. But the scholars and the Bible calls it precept upon precept. Here a little, there a little, meaning different parts of the Bible, not in the same chapter. All right. We just read out of the New Testament of them referring to the Old Testament, which there's no separation between the two. The New Testament is a testimony of the prophets of the 12 and of the prophets coming back, because they are the 12 and other men of the Lord. And it's the testament of the disciples and the Lord teaching the Old Testament. All right. There's no separation or difference between the two. All right. To make that clear. But this is Psalms 44:11. Thou hast given us like sheep appointed for meat. Man, come listen to that. And have scattered us among the heathen. We're scattered among the heathen like meat, man. We as a people have been going through it. Not those converts over in the land. Remember Ezekiel 36 chapter. They fulfill that prophecy. The heathen are in the land of the Lord, claiming to be us, and they're going to be there until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And that's the natural Gentiles, not the Hellenist, the scattered that I'm reading about of the diaspora. I'm reading about there's a difference between the Gentiles that I'm reading about and the Gentiles that are the natural Gentiles of the other nations. All right. And Christianism tried to lie and make them all the same. That is a lie. These scriptures I'm reading, these are not my words, are testifying that I'm speaking the truth and that they lie. This is Ezekiel 6 and 8. Yet I will leave a remnant. All right. It's not the elder bro Yashawamba. One of the title of two of his channels, the remnant, a remnant saved. All right. Yet I will leave a remnant that ye may have some that shall escape the sword among the nations when ye shall be scattered throughout the countries. Our people, the Israelites, are scattered among all people, including those Ish people and include so-called white people, and they're going to come looking like them and like the young Ethiopian brother that was before us yesterday. That dude was a Jake, man. All right. Like I said, and the separation between him and his homie, it began even already. I told him it's just a matter of time that he won't be your friend anymore, man. I told him that right to his face. And I told the Ethiopian dude, you are actual Hamite. Your friend here is one of us. All right. That's why you're not interested and he's seeking to the gospel. There's a difference between you. All right. This is Esther 3 and 8. And it reads, and Haman said unto the king Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces. This kingdom, I believe, had 172 provinces or something like that. All right. This was the biggest kingdom in the history of mankind, by the way. It says, there are certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all the people, and that will be the Israelites, okay? And neither they keep the king's laws, therefore it is not for the king's prophet to suffer them, because Haman was trying to get it just like Malone. I thoroughly believe that that's vocab Malone all over again. And he's Haman Malone. That's one of the names we call him. All right, because his whole gospel is about coming after the Hebrew Israelites. With all the wickedness that's being done through the churches, through the Catholic churches, child trafficking, the sex things, and all the genocide that's going on, the pedophilia, the pedo stuff going on with people running back to Israel to hide from it. He has nothing to say about any of that. And his whole thing is try to disprove that the Lord looked that the Israelites were olive-colored people, and we're looking at olives and we know they weren't the green ones. So they just try to deny the truth that is truth and make their own truth. Right? And the last scripture I'm going to do, because I want to give you 4, precept upon precept, line upon line. Last precept to prove that point, that we're scattered among all people and are going to come looking like those people, is Ezekiel 28. No, not Ezekiel 28. Is it 25? Hold on. Where's his precept? Yeah, Ezekiel 28. Yep, 25. I was right. It says, "Thus saith the Lord power, when I shall have gathered the house of Israel from the people among whom they have been scattered." This is why the gospel had to go to every nation, to the Israelites scattered among them, because the gospel is only for them. All right? Why you think that he's gathering them? If it's not, he just leave them where they are and teach it to all people. But the Lord made a very conscious effort to make sure that you heard over and over again that he's going to gather them from among the places they have been scattered. If it was for everybody, he just would have gathered up all those who believe. Dummies. All right. "Thus saith the Lord power, when I have gathered the house of Israel, the race, all right, from the people among whom they are scattered, and shall be sanctified in them in the sight of the heathen, then shall they dwell in their land, and I have given to my servant Jacob." That has not happened. Israel is not restored into the land yet. All right, so with that, I want to give all praises, all honor and glory unto Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rakah Kodash, Kwam Yasharala, Abad Babal.